"Don't move, or she dies." The words echoed through Aurora Tower's marble lobby as four armed men surrounded CEO Vivian Vale. Security cameras rolled. Panic erupted. But in that moment of terror, an unexpected hero emerged, not from the elite security team, but from the shadows where society's invisible workers worked. Noah Hale, the night janitor everyone ignored, stepped forward, with nothing but a mop and years of hidden training. What happened next would change everything and expose truths that powerful people desperately wanted buried. The golden hour light streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Aurora Tower, casting long shadows across the pristine marble lobby. In 6 hours, this space would transform into the stage for the most prestigious corporate event of the year, the Aurora Innovation Summit. But right now, at 3 p.m. on this seemingly ordinary Tuesday, the 40-story building hummed with the quiet efficiency of preparation. Noah Hale pushed his cleaning cart across the spotless floor, the wheels squeaking softly, in a rhythm he'd grown accustomed to over the past 6 weeks. To anyone watching, and few ever did, he was just another invisible worker, part of the building's background machinery. His navy blue uniform bore the simple patch, Facilities Management, and his weathered hands gripped the mop handle with the practiced ease of someone who'd done this job 1,000 times before. But Noah Hale was not who he appeared to be. At 38, Noah possessed the kind of lean, wiry frame that spoke of discipline rather than gym membership. His dark hair was beginning to show silver at the temples, and his brown eyes held a depth that most people never bothered to notice. Those who did really look, might catch something in his posture, the way he moved with controlled precision, how his gaze swept and cataloged everything around him. But in a world where people rushed past service workers without a second glance, Noah had perfected the art of being invisible. "Daddy, you forgot your bracelet." The memory of his daughter Lily's voice that morning brought a small smile to Noah's face. He glanced down at his left wrist, where a simple blue fabric bracelet spelled out "Breathe" in white letters. Lily had made it for him in her second-grade art class, insisting it would help him remember to stay calm during stressful times. "It's magic, Daddy," she had said, with the absolute certainty that only 7-year-olds possessed. "Whenever you feel scared or angry, just touch it and breathe deep and everything will be okay." Noah had worn it every day since, though he doubted Lily realized just how much he needed that reminder. The elevator chimed and Noah looked up to see Vivian Vale step into the lobby, her heels clicking against the marble in a staccato rhythm that announced her presence before she even appeared. The CEO of Aurora Dynamics was everything Noah had expected from his preliminary research, polished, confident, and completely absorbed in the image she projected. At 42, Vivian had built Aurora Dynamics from a small tech startup into a billion-dollar corporation in just 8 years. Forbes had featured her on 3 covers, and she'd been named CEO of the Year by Business Weekly twice running. Today she wore a tailored white suit that probably cost more than Noah made in 6 months, and her blonde hair was swept back in a style that managed to look both professional and effortlessly elegant. "Marcus, where are we with the final preparations?" She spoke into her phone, not bothering to acknowledge Noah as she strode past. "I don't want any surprises tonight. The mayor will be here along with half the city council, and if anything goes wrong..." Her voice faded as she disappeared into the executive elevator, but Noah had heard enough. He'd been listening to conversations like this for weeks, gathering intelligence on Aurora's operations, security protocols, and the events that would culminate in tonight's summit. Noah resumed his methodical cleaning, working his way toward the main reception desk, where Sarah Chen, the evening shift security coordinator, was reviewing the guest list on her tablet. "Hey, Noah," Sarah said without looking up. She was one of the few employees who bothered to learn his name. "You're here early today." Figured I'd get a head start, Noah replied, keeping his voice in the slightly tired tone he'd cultivated for this role. Big event tonight, right? The biggest? Sarah confirmed, finally glancing up. 300 guests, including some pretty heavy hitters. We've got extra security coming in at 5, but honestly, between you and me, I think Ms. Vale is cutting corners on protection. She keeps saying Aurora Tower's reputation is security enough. Noah filed this information away. Reputation doesn't stop determined people, he said carefully. Sarah laughed. Tell that to the boss lady. She thinks spending money on security is just paranoia. We're a tech company, not a bank, she keeps saying. Interesting perspective, Noah murmured, then changed the subject. You have kids, Sarah? 2 boys, 8 and 10. You, a daughter, 7. Noah's expression softened genuinely. Her name's Lily. Must be tough working nights and raising a little one on your own. Noah's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. We manage. The truth was more complicated than Sarah could imagine. Noah's wife Emma had died in a car accident 2 years ago, leaving him to raise Lily alone. But even before that tragedy, his life had been built around careful compartmentalization. Emma had known some of his background enough to understand why he sometimes woke up in cold sweats, why certain news stories made him go quiet and distant. But she'd never known the full extent of what he'd done before they met, or why he'd walked away from it all. Daddy, why do people hurt other people? Lily had asked him just last week after hearing something on the news about a kidnapping in another city. Noah had knelt down to her level, looking into eyes that were the same deep brown as Emma's. Sometimes people make bad choices, sweetheart. But that's why there are good people who work to stop them. Like police officers. Like police officers, he'd agreed. And teachers and doctors and lots of other people who care about keeping everyone safe. Will you keep me safe, Daddy? Always, he'd promised, and meant it with every fiber of his being. Now, as he worked his way around the lobby, Noah found himself thinking about that conversation. Lily was staying with Emma's sister Karen tonight, blissfully unaware of the true nature of her father's current assignment. She thought he was just working late again, cleaning offices in the big building downtown. If only it were that simple. The afternoon progressed with the usual bustle of pre-event preparation. Caterers arrived with their trucks, florists transformed the lobby into an elegant garden of white orchids and silver accents, and technicians tested sound systems and lighting. Through it all, Noah moved like a ghost, observing everything, while appearing to notice nothing. At 4:30, he took his mandated break and slipped into the employee lounge in the basement. The room was empty except for a few lockers and vending machines, providing the privacy he needed for his real work. Noah pulled out a burner phone and dialed a number he knew by heart. Control. Eagle's Nest, this is Shepard, Noah said quietly. 6-week surveillance complete. Filing final report. Copy Shepard. Status. Target Corporation shows systemic security negligence as suspected. CEO Vivian Vale has repeatedly overruled safety recommendations to cut costs. Building protocols are inadequate for tonight's event profile. Any immediate threats? Noah paused, considering his observations from the past several weeks. Nothing concrete, but the vulnerability window is significant. If someone wanted to make a move against Aurora or its leadership tonight, would present optimal conditions. Understood. Maintain cover and continue observation. We need documentation of the security failures in real time. Roger. Shepard out. Noah pocketed the phone and returned to the elevator, his mind already shifting back into the role of Noah Hale, night janitor. But as the elevator climbed toward the lobby, he found himself touching Lily's bracelet and taking a deep breath. Something felt wrong. It wasn't anything he could articulate, no specific threat or obvious danger. But after 15 years in federal law enforcement, including 5 years in an elite corporate crimes task force, Noah had learned to trust his instincts. And right now, those instincts were screaming that tonight's event was going to be more than just another corporate gathering. Back in the lobby, the transformation was nearly complete. The marble floors gleamed under strategically placed lighting, and the floral arrangements created an atmosphere of sophisticated elegance. Staff members in black uniforms moved with practiced efficiency, making final adjustments to table settings and checking that every detail met Vivian Vale's exacting standards. Noah positioned himself near the service entrance where his cleaning duties gave him a clear view of everyone entering and leaving the building. This wasn't accident. He'd specifically requested this area from his supervisor, claiming it was where the most intensive cleaning was needed. At 5:15, the first of the evening security team arrived. Noah watched them check in with Sarah, noting their equipment and positioning. There were 6 additional guards, not nearly enough for an event of this magnitude, but consistent with Aurora's cost-cutting approach to security. Noah called Jake Martinez, one of the day-shift janitors who was staying late to help with the event. "You see where they put the extra supply closet key? Should be in the usual spot," Noah replied, gesturing toward the reception desk. But as Jake walked away, Noah noticed something that made his blood run cold. A man in a server's uniform was standing near the coat check area, but his behavior was all wrong. Instead of focusing on his assigned duties, his eyes were mapping the room's exits, counting security personnel, and timing the intervals between guard rotations. When he thought no one was looking, he adjusted something in his pocket that created a distinctly rectangular bulge. Noah had seen enough surveillance behavior to recognize it instantly. Moving casually with his cleaning cart, Noah positioned himself where he could observe the suspicious server more closely. The man was in his 30s with dark hair and the kind of generic features that made him forgettable, exactly the type of appearance someone would choose for covert operations. His movements were too precise, too calculated for someone whose job was simply serving appetizers. But it was the shoes that confirmed Noah's suspicions. The man wore standard black dress shoes that any server might choose, but Noah noticed they were tactical boots disguised to look formal. The thick soles and reinforced construction were designed for rapid movement and stability, not for standing behind a catering station for 6 hours. Noah's hand instinctively moved to his wrist, and he took a slow, deep breath as Lily had taught him. But this time, the breathing technique served a different purpose. In his previous life, breath control had been the foundation of staying calm under pressure, of maintaining accuracy when lives hung in the balance. He needed to gather more information before taking action, but every instinct told him that this man was not here to serve drinks. As if sensing his scrutiny, the suspicious server looked up and made brief eye contact with Noah. For just a moment, something passed between them, the recognition of one professional by another. Then the man's expression shifted to bland indifference, and he returned to arranging napkins with studied casualness. But Noah had seen enough. Moving to a position where he could observe without being obvious, began cataloging everything about the man's behavior. The way he favored his right side suggested he was carrying something significant in his jacket. His frequent glances toward specific exit points indicated he had an escape route planned. Most telling of all, he kept checking his watch and looking toward the main entrance as if waiting for something or someone. At 6:00 p.m., the first guests began arriving. The lobby filled with the city's elite business leaders, politicians, celebrities, and media personalities. Vivian Vale positioned herself near the main entrance, greeting each arrival with the polished charm that had made her a media darling. Noah continued his cleaning duties, but his attention was split between maintaining his cover and monitoring the suspicious server. And then, at 6:23 p.m., his worst fears were confirmed. 3 more men entered the building. They arrived separately, each with perfect credentials and believable cover stories. One was dressed as a photographer for Business Weekly, complete with professional camera equipment. Another appeared to be a last-minute addition to the catering staff, carrying a box of what looked like emergency supplies. The third presented himself as a security consultant, claiming to be there for a final assessment of the evening's protocols. But Noah saw what others missed. They moved like a team. Subtle hand signals, coordinated positioning, the same tactical awareness he'd observed in the first man. And most damning of all, each of them wore the same style of disguised tactical boots. Noah's mind raced through the possibilities. 4 operatives professionally trained with inside knowledge of the building and event. They could be planning anything from corporate espionage to kidnapping to something far worse. He needed to alert security, but he also needed to maintain his cover. His federal investigation into Aurora's security practices was still ongoing, and blowing his identity now could compromise months of work. But as he watched Vivian Vale laugh and pose for photographs, completely oblivious to the danger surrounding her, Noah realized that some things were more important than any investigation. At 6:45, the suspicious server approached the bar area where several of the evening's most important guests were gathered. Noah noticed him slip something small into his palm, something that caught the light with a metallic glint. That's when Noah made his decision. He abandoned his cleaning cart and began moving through the crowd, using his invisible status to position himself closer to the developing threat. As he moved, his hand found Lily's bracelet, and he drew on every technique he'd learned in his years of high-stakes law enforcement. Stay calm, assess the situation, protect the innocent, stop the threat. The 4 operatives were closing in on their target, and Noah was the only one who saw it coming. The evening was about to take a very dangerous turn, and the invisible janitor was about to become the most important person in the room. But first, he needed to figure out exactly what these men were planning and how to stop them without getting everyone in the lobby killed in the process. As the clock approached 7:00 p.m. and the event reached its peak attendance, Noah Hale prepared to step out of the shadows and into a confrontation that would test every skill he'd ever learned. The invisible man was about to become very visible indeed. And somewhere across town, 7-year-old Lily Hale was coloring a picture of her daddy at work, completely unaware that her father was about to risk everything to save a room full of strangers, because that's what heroes do even when no one knows they're heroes at all. The clock struck 7:00 p.m. and the Aurora Innovation Summit reached its crescendo. The lobby sparkled with the energy of 300 of the city's most influential people, their conversations creating a sophisticated symphony of clinking glasses and polite laughter. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows across designer gowns and tailored suits, while servers wove through the crowd, carrying silver trays of champagne and delicate hors d'oeuvre. Noah maintained his position near the service corridor, his cleaning supplies providing the perfect cover as he tracked the 4 operatives' movements. The fake server had positioned himself behind the main bar, his hands working with practiced efficiency as he prepared drinks. But Noah noticed how his eyes never stopped scanning, cataloging exit routes and security positions with military precision. The photographer moved through the crowd with his camera snapping pictures of prominent guests. To anyone watching, he appeared to be documenting the event for Business Weekly. But Noah observed how he focused his lens on specific individuals: Mayor Patricia Williams, City Council Chairman Robert Chen, Aurora's Chief Technology Officer, Dr. Martinez, while avoiding the typical crowd shots a real photographer would capture. The third operative, posing as additional catering staff, had stationed himself near the executive elevator. His box of supplies remained unopened, and Noah noticed the slight bulge of equipment hidden beneath his white jacket. Every few minutes he would touch his earpiece and nod almost imperceptibly, clearly receiving instructions from somewhere. The fourth man, the supposed security consultant, was the most dangerous. He moved with the confidence of someone who belonged, chatting casually with Aurora's actual security team while systematically identifying their weaknesses. Noah watched him note the guards' radio frequencies, their positioning patterns, and the gaps in their coverage. "Ladies and gentlemen," Vivian Vale's voice rang out over the crowd as she stepped onto a small platform near the main staircase. "If I could have your attention for just a moment." The room gradually quieted, guests turning toward their hostess with polite anticipation. Vivian stood radiant in the spotlight, her white suit gleaming like armor as she surveyed her assembled empire of influence and power. "Tonight marks a pivotal moment for Aurora Dynamics," she began, her voice carrying the polished confidence that had made her a corporate legend. "We stand on the threshold of announcing our most ambitious project, yet a partnership that will reshape not just our company, but the entire landscape of technological innovation." Noah felt his blood run cold as he noticed the four operatives subtly adjusting their positions. The fake server moved closer to the VIP section where the mayor and other dignitaries stood. The photographer raised his camera, but Noah could see he wasn't focusing on Vivian. His lens was trained on the emergency exits. The catering operative's hand moved to his jacket, and the security consultant began walking purposefully toward the main entrance. They were moving into position for something big. "Before we reveal this groundbreaking initiative," Vivian continued, completely oblivious to the danger surrounding her, "I want to thank each of you for being part of Aurora's journey. Your support, your trust, and your partnership have brought us to this moment." The crowd murmured appreciatively, but Noah was focused entirely on the developing threat. He needed to act, but he also needed to understand exactly what these men were planning. A premature move could trigger a violent response that would endanger everyone in the room. Moving as casually as possible, Noah pushed his cleaning cart toward the bar area, positioning himself where he could hear the fake servers' conversations. As he began wiping down already clean surfaces, he caught fragments of whispered exchanges. "Target confirmed. Security rotation in 3 minutes. Package ready for deployment." The words sent ice through Noah's veins. Package deployment suggested something far worse than a simple kidnapping or robbery. These men were planning something that could harm dozens of innocent people. "Excuse me?" A sharp voice interrupted his eavesdropping. Noah looked up to see James Morrison, Aurora's head of security, glaring at him with suspicion. "What are you doing in this area? The service staff should be in the back corridors during the presentation." Noah forced his expression into the apologetic deference he'd perfected over 6 weeks. "Sorry, sir. Just trying to keep everything clean for the guests. I'll move along." But Morrison wasn't satisfied. "I don't recognize you. What's your name?" "Noah Hale, sir. I've been on the night shift for about 6 weeks now." Morrison's eyes narrowed. Something in Noah's posture or manner had triggered his suspicion, perhaps the way Noah held himself, or the alertness in his eyes that didn't match his humble role. "Show me your identification," Morrison demanded. Noah reached slowly for his wallet, but his mind was racing. The fake server was less than 10 feet away, and Noah could see him preparing something behind the bar. Whatever these operatives were planning, it was about to happen. "Here's my badge," Noah said, handing over the perfectly forged identification that his federal task force had created for this assignment. "I can get my supervisor if you need, Mr. Morrison." The interruption came from Sarah Chen, who appeared at his elbow looking flustered. "I need you to check the main entrance. We've got someone trying to get in without proper credentials, and they're getting aggressive with the door staff." Morrison glanced between Noah and Sarah, clearly torn between his suspicion and his immediate duty. "Stay right here," he ordered Noah, then turned to follow Sarah toward the entrance. As soon as Morrison disappeared into the crowd, Noah abandoned all pretense of subtlety. He moved directly toward the fake server, his trained eyes taking in every detail of the man's preparation. Hidden behind the bar, the operative was assembling something that looked like a small electronic device, something with wires and a digital display that made Noah's blood run cold. "Interesting equipment for a bartender," Noah said quietly, appearing beside the man with startling suddenness. The fake server spun around, his hand instinctively moving toward his jacket. But Noah was faster, his own hand clamping down on the man's wrist with crushing force. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," Noah continued in the same calm tone. "Not unless you want to explain to all these nice people why a catering employee is carrying a Glock 19. The man's eyes went wide with surprise, then narrowed with calculation. "You're not a janitor. And you're not a server. So I guess we're both having an interesting evening." Noah's grip tightened on the man's wrist. "The question is, what exactly are you and your friends planning to do with whatever you're building behind this bar?" For a moment, neither man moved. Around them, the party continued obliviously. Vivian Vale's voice still echoing over the crowd as she described Aurora's revolutionary new partnership. But Noah could feel the tension radiating from the operative, the coiled energy of someone preparing to fight or flee. "You have no idea what you're interfering with," the man said through gritted teeth. "Then enlighten me. This isn't about money or corporate secrets. Aurora Dynamics has been selling technology to foreign governments, technology that's being used to suppress democratic movements around the world. Tonight's announcement will formalize a partnership that will put surveillance and crowd control systems in the hands of dictatorships." Noah felt a chill of recognition. His federal investigation had uncovered irregularities in Aurora's international contracts, but nothing this serious. "And your solution is to what, bomb a room full of innocent people?" "The device isn't explosive," the man replied. "It's an electromagnetic pulse generator. Targeted, controlled, designed to disable Aurora's servers and destroy their data before the partnership can be finalized. Along with every pacemaker, insulin pump, and medical device in this room," Noah countered grimly. "You'll kill dozens of people to make your point." The operative's face showed the first crack of uncertainty. "We calculated the medical risks." "Did you calculate the risks to Mayor Williams? She has a cardiac implant. Or Dr. Martinez's daughter. She's here tonight wearing a continuous glucose monitor for her diabetes." Noah's voice remained steady, but his words carried the weight of absolute certainty. "Your surgical strike is going to be a massacre." As realization dawned in the man's eyes, Noah saw his opportunity. With a swift movement, he knocked the partially assembled device to the floor and swept the operative's legs, sending him crashing into the bar equipment. Bottles shattered and metal clanged as the man went down hard, but the noise attracted attention Noah couldn't afford. "Hey!" shouted one of the actual servers. "What's going on over there?" The commotion rippled through the nearby crowd, and Noah saw the other three operatives react with alarm. The photographer dropped his camera and began pushing through the crowd toward the bar. The fake catering employee abandoned his post by the elevator and started moving with deadly purpose. The security consultant broke off his conversation and spoke urgently into his hidden microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," Vivian Vale's voice cut through the growing murmur of concern. "Please remain calm. It appears we've had a small accident at the bar, but everything is under control." But everything was not under control. Noah found himself in the worst possible position, surrounded by hundreds of innocent civilians facing three trained operatives who now knew their mission was compromised. The fallen man behind the bar was already recovering his hand, reaching for his concealed weapon. "Security!" someone shouted from across the room. "We need security at the bar." But Noah realized with growing horror that Morrison and most of the security team were still dealing with the manufactured distraction at the main entrance. Sarah Chen was trying to push through the crowd toward him, but she was too far away and completely unprepared for what was coming. The photographer reached the bar first, his hand inside his jacket, as he assessed the situation. His eyes met Noah's across the scattered bottles and broken glass, and Noah saw the cold calculation of a professional killer. "You made a mistake, Janitor," the man said quietly, his weapon partially visible beneath his jacket. "A very big mistake." "The only mistake," Noah replied, his hand moving to touch Lily's bracelet, "is thinking I'm just a janitor." In one fluid motion, Noah grabbed a bottle of top-shelf whiskey and hurled it at the photographer's head. As the man ducked, Noah vaulted over the bar, using his momentum to drive his shoulder into the operative's chest. They crashed into a cluster of guests, sending champagne glasses flying and triggering screams of panic. The careful order of the Aurora Innovation Summit dissolved into chaos. Women in evening gowns stumbled in their high heels as they tried to flee. Men in expensive suits pushed and shoved, their veneer of civilization cracking under the pressure of genuine fear. The orchestra stopped playing mid-song, their instruments creating a discordant finale as musicians abandoned their posts. Through the mayhem, Noah saw the third operative, the fake catering employee, pulling a small black device from his jacket. Not a weapon, but some kind of communication equipment. "Abort the EMP," the man spoke urgently into the device. "Repeat, abort the EMP. We're switching to extraction protocol. Move to secondary objective." Secondary objective. That meant they had a backup plan, something they could implement even with their primary mission compromised. And given their original target, Noah could guess what that backup plan involved. Vivian Vale. She was still on the platform, her security detail finally realizing that something had gone catastrophically wrong, but they were trained to handle corporate espionage and business disputes, not military-level threats. As Noah watched, he saw them making all the wrong moves, clustering around their principal. Instead of creating escape routes, radioing for help on frequencies the fourth operative had already monitored. The fake security consultant was moving toward the platform with purposeful strides, his hand inside his jacket. He walked with the confidence of someone who knew exactly how the real security team would react, because he'd spent the evening studying their protocols. Noah had perhaps 30 seconds before the consultant reached Vivian, and he was still tangled up with the photographer 20 feet away from the bar. Around them, the panic was growing as more guests realized this wasn't just an accident. "Everyone stay calm," Vivian called out, her voice carrying over the crowd. "Please move toward the exits in an orderly fashion." But her words only increased the panic. The mention of exits triggered a stampede as 300 people tried to squeeze through doorways designed for normal traffic flow. The main entrance became a bottleneck of pushing, shoving bodies, while the emergency exits remained largely unnoticed in the confusion. Noah finally broke free from his struggle with the photographer, leaving the man unconscious behind an overturned table. But as he looked toward the platform, his heart sank. The consultant had reached Vivian's security detail. "Gentlemen," Noah heard him say with professional calm, "we have a credible threat against Ms. Vale. I need to escort her to a secure location immediately." The Aurora security team, overwhelmed by the chaos and grateful for expert help, began to follow his lead. They formed a protective circle around Vivian, exactly as their training dictated, while the consultant positioned himself to guide them toward his chosen exit. Noah realized with crystalline clarity that he was watching a textbook extraction operation. The EMP device had been a distraction, designed to create chaos and provide cover for kidnapping the CEO of Aurora Dynamics. With Vivian in their custody, these operatives could force her to reveal security codes, financial information, or any other corporate secrets they needed. Or they could simply make her disappear forever. "Stop!" Noah shouted, but his voice was lost in the crowd noise. He began pushing through the fleeing guests, using his knowledge of the building's layout to take the shortest route to the platform. But he wasn't the only one moving with purpose. The fake server recovered from his fall behind the bar was circling around the other side of the room. The fake catering employee was abandoning his communication device and moving to establish a perimeter. Even the photographer, despite his head injury, was getting back to his feet with grim determination. They were coordinating their movements like the professional team. They were adapting to the chaos while maintaining their operational objectives. Whatever organization had sent them, they had trained for exactly this kind of contingency. Noah reached the edge of the platform just as Vivian's security detail began moving toward what they thought was safety. The consultant had his hand on Vivian's elbow, guiding her with gentle but insistent pressure. "Ms. Vale," Noah called out, "don't go with that man." Vivian looked confused, her composure finally cracking under the stress of the evening's events. "I'm sorry, who are you?" "Your janitor," Noah replied grimly. "And right now, I'm the only person in this room you can trust." James Morrison appeared at Noah's shoulder, his face flushed with anger and confusion. "What the hell is going on here, and why is the cleaning staff giving security advice?" "Because your security consultant isn't who he claims to be," Noah said quickly. "None of the new staff tonight are who they claim to be. You've got 4 operatives conducting an extraction operation, and they're about to walk out of here with your boss." Morrison stared at Noah as if he'd lost his mind. "That's impossible. I vetted all the additional personnel myself." "Then your vetting process has some serious flaws." The consultant, seeing his window of opportunity closing, made his move. "We need to go now," he told Vivian's security team urgently. "I have intel suggesting this disturbance is cover for a more serious threat." But Vivian, perhaps recognizing something in Noah's demeanor, held her ground. "Wait," she said. "I want to hear what this man has to say." "Ma'am, we don't have time," the consultant began. "There's always time to listen." Vivian interrupted, her executive authority reasserting itself despite the chaos. "You," she pointed at Noah. "Explain, quickly." Noah took a deep breath, knowing he had perhaps 15 seconds to convince her before the consultant decided to abandon subtlety and use force. "Your security consultant has been monitoring your real security team's radio frequencies all evening. The photographer has been mapping exits instead of taking pictures. The server behind the bar was assembling an electromagnetic pulse device. And the catering employee who's been standing by your elevator isn't actually with the catering company." Vivian's eyes widened as the implications sank in. "How could you possibly know all that?" "Because I've been watching them for the past hour. And because—" Noah hesitated, knowing his next words would blow his carefully constructed cover forever. "Because I'm not really a janitor." The consultant's hand moved inside his jacket with lightning speed, but Noah was faster. Years of training kicked in as he lunged forward, tackling the man before he could draw his weapon. They crashed into Vivian's security detail, sending everyone sprawling across the platform. "Gun!" someone screamed, and the last vestiges of order in the lobby disappeared entirely. People ran in every direction, no longer caring about dignity or decorum. Tables overturned, sending flowers and glassware crashing to the floor. The orchestra platform collapsed under the weight of fleeing musicians. Emergency alarms began wailing as people pressed against the fire exits, triggering the building's evacuation systems. Noah found himself in a desperate struggle with the consultant, both men fighting for control of a pistol that had appeared from somewhere in the chaos. The weapon skittered across the platform, coming to rest near Vivian's feet. "Don't touch it!" Noah shouted as Vivian reached for the gun. "There are still 3 more of them." As if summoned by his words, The fake server appeared at the edge of the platform, his own weapon drawn and pointed directly at Vivian's head. "Everyone freeze!" The man commanded, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade. "Ms. Vale, you're going to come with us quietly, or a lot of innocent people are going to get hurt." The exodus slowed as nearby guests realized they were caught in the middle of an armed confrontation. Some continued fleeing toward the exits, but others froze in place, too terrified to move. Noah found himself pinned beneath the consultant, the man's forearm pressed against his throat, while his other hand reached for a backup weapon. On the platform above, Vivian stood frozen as the fake server kept his gun trained on her head. "This doesn't have to end badly," the server continued. "We just need Ms. Vale to come with us for a brief conversation. Once we have what we need, everyone goes home safely." But Noah knew that was a lie. These operatives had been willing to risk killing innocent people with an EMP device. They weren't going to leave witnesses to their kidnapping operation, especially not witnesses who could identify them. "Vivian," Noah gasped, fighting against the chokehold. "Remember what I said about trust." She looked down at him, and for a moment their eyes met across the chaos. Noah saw fear there, but also intelligence and determination. Vivian Vale hadn't built a billion-dollar company by folding under pressure. "You know what?" she said to the gunman, her voice steady despite the weapon pointed at her head. "I don't think I want to have that conversation." And then she did something that surprised everyone in the room, including Noah. She smiled. "Security Protocol 77 Alpha," she said clearly. Hidden panels in the walls slid open, revealing Aurora's actual security measures, not the basic guard service that Morrison managed, but a sophisticated defense system that Vivian had installed without telling anyone. Automated cameras emerged from concealed positions, infrared scanners swept the room, and pressure-sensitive floor panels began tracking every person's location. The fake server's confidence faltered as he realized he was no longer in control of the situation. "What did you just do?" "Something I should have done weeks ago," Vivian replied. "I activated Aurora's real security system, the one that my insurance company required, but that I never told my staff about, because I didn't want them to feel like I didn't trust them." Red laser dots appeared on all four operatives simultaneously as the automated targeting system identified them as threats. Computer-generated voice announced, "Hostile targets identified. Security response teams activated. Building lockdown initiated." The consultant beneath Noah suddenly went limp as he realized their mission had gone from difficult to impossible. Steel shutters began descending over the windows and exits sealing the building, while Aurora's private security force responded to the automated alert. But Noah knew the danger wasn't over yet. Cornered operatives were the most dangerous kind, and these men still had weapons and hundreds of potential hostages. The next few minutes would determine whether this evening ended with arrests or a bloodbath. As the first of Aurora's real security team burst through the secured entrances, Noah made a decision that would change everything about his carefully maintained cover. He rolled out from under the consultant, grabbed the loose pistol from beside Vivian's feet, and stood up facing the crowd with the weapon held in a perfect tactical stance. "Federal agent," he announced, his voice carrying with unmistakable authority. "Everyone on the ground now." The transformation was instantaneous. Gone was Noah Hale, the humble night janitor. In his place stood someone who moved with deadly precision, whose voice commanded immediate obedience, whose entire bearing radiated professional competence. The fake server spun toward this new threat, but Noah was already moving, his training taking over as the situation escalated beyond any hope of maintaining his cover. The invisible man had finally stepped into the light, and the real confrontation was about to begin. The words "federal agent" still echoed through the chaos-filled lobby as Noah's transformation sent shockwaves through everyone present. The fake server's weapon wavered for a split second, long enough for Noah to exploit the momentary confusion. In one fluid motion that spoke of years of specialized training, Noah dove behind an overturned cocktail table while simultaneously firing a warning shot that shattered a crystal chandelier above the operative's head. Glass rained down like deadly confetti, forcing the gunman to shield his eyes and lose his bead on Vivian. The cascade of sparkling fragments caught the emergency lighting, creating a momentary disco ball effect that would have been beautiful under different circumstances. "Move, move, move!" Noah shouted to the remaining guests, his voice carrying the unmistakable authority of someone accustomed to life or death situations. "Everyone toward the east emergency exit, stay low and keep moving." But even as civilians began following his orders with the desperate obedience of people who finally recognized competent leadership, Noah's mind was calculating the tactical nightmare he now faced. 4 armed operatives, hundreds of potential hostages, limited cover, and Aurora's automated security system that could mistake anyone with a weapon, including himself, as a threat. The fake catering employee had taken position behind a marble pillar near the main staircase, his weapon trained on the fleeing crowd. "Nobody moves!" he screamed, his professional composure finally cracking under the pressure. "Next person who tries to leave gets a bullet." Several guests froze mid-flight, caught between Noah's orders and the operative's threats. A woman in a silver evening gown began sobbing quietly. Her hands pressed against her mouth, as if she could somehow make herself invisible. An elderly man in a tuxedo stumbled and fell, his walking cane clattering across the marble floor, as younger guests stepped over him in their panic. "Let them go!" Noah called out, keeping his position behind the table while tracking the movements of all 4 operatives. "This is between us. These people have nothing to do with whatever Aurora's done." "Everything has to do with Aurora," the fake photographer shouted from his position near the collapsed orchestra platform. Blood streamed down his face from where Noah's thrown bottle had connected, giving him a wild, desperate appearance. "You have no idea what this company really is." "Then enlighten me," Noah replied, using the conversation to buy time while he assessed his options. "But let these people go first. They don't deserve to die for corporate sins they don't even know about." Vivian, who had remained remarkably composed throughout the confrontation, spoke up from her position behind Noah. "What is it you think we've done? Aurora Dynamics is a technology company. We develop software solutions for businesses and governments." "Software solutions?" The fake server laughed bitterly, his weapon still trained on the crowd. "Is that what you call surveillance systems designed to track and suppress political dissidents? Is that your euphemism for facial recognition technology that helps dictatorships identify and disappear protesters?" Noah felt a chill of recognition. His federal investigation had uncovered irregularities in Aurora's international contracts, but the scope was apparently much larger than he'd realized. "You're talking about the Southeast Asian contracts," he said. The consultant, who had been slowly recovering from their struggle, managed to prop himself up against the platform. "Finally, someone who's done their homework. Tell me, federal agent, whoever you are, how much did you know about Aurora's real business?" "Enough to know you're not the good guys either," Noah replied grimly. "EMP devices in crowded buildings, kidnapping CEOs. You're not freedom fighters, you're terrorists. We're the only ones willing to do what's necessary." The fake catering employee screamed, his weapon swinging wildly between Noah and the crowd. "While governments debate and corporations count profits, people are dying because of the technology Aurora sells. And your solution is to kill more people." Noah's voice carried a weight of authority that cut through the hysteria. "Look around you. You're pointing guns at teachers, doctors, small business owners. These aren't the people oppressing anyone. But even as he tried to de-escalate the situation, Noah could see the operatives were past the point of rational negotiation. The fake photographer was bleeding heavily from his head wound, his movements becoming increasingly erratic. The server's hands were shaking with adrenaline and fury. The catering employee looked like he was on the verge of a complete breakdown. Only the consultant maintained any semblance of tactical awareness, and that made him the most dangerous of the four. "Here's what's going to happen," the consultant said, his voice steady despite his injuries. "Ms. Vale is going to come with us. She's going to transfer ownership codes for Aurora's International Surveillance Division to an account we specify. And then we're all going to walk out of here." "That's not going to happen," Noah replied flatly. "Then a lot of innocent people are going to die." "They're going to die anyway if I let you walk out of here with her." Noah's tactical experience told him that negotiating with cornered operatives rarely ended well. "You didn't plan this operation expecting to leave witnesses." The consultant's slight smile confirmed Noah's suspicion. These men had come prepared for a mission that ended with Aurora's leadership dead and their own identities permanently protected. Aurora's automated security system chose that moment to announce, "External security teams have arrived. Building perimeter secured. Initiating internal threat assessment." New red laser dots appeared throughout the lobby as additional targeting systems came online. Noah realized with growing alarm that the building's AI was having difficulty distinguishing between threats and defenders in the chaos. "Warning," the computerized voice continued. "Multiple armed individuals detected. Initiating pacification protocol in 30 seconds. "What's pacification protocol?" Noah shouted to Vivian. Her face went pale. "Non-lethal suppression systems, electrical stun fields, knockout gas, sonic disruptors. It's designed to incapacitate everyone in the affected area until human security can sort out the situation." "Can you override it?" "Not from here. The controls are in my office on the 40th floor." Noah's mind raced through the implications. In 30 seconds, everyone in the lobby, including the innocent civilians, would be subjected to Aurora's defensive measures. People with pacemakers could die from electrical stun fields. Anyone with respiratory problems might not survive knockout gas. The sonic disruptors could cause permanent hearing damage. 25 seconds to pacification protocol, the system announced helpfully. The fake photographer, apparently realizing that Aurora's security system represented a greater threat than Noah's pistol, broke cover and began running toward the nearest emergency exit. But the steel shutters had already sealed most escape routes, and he found himself trapped in a corner with nowhere to go. "Turn it off!" he screamed at Vivian. "Turn off your damn security system!" "I can't," she replied. "Not from here. 20 seconds to pacification protocol." The fake server's composure finally shattered completely. "This is insane," he yelled, swinging his weapon toward Noah. "We're all going to die because of your corporate paranoia." But his desperation made him careless. As he stepped out from behind his cover to get a better angle on Noah, he exposed himself to Aurora's targeting system. A brilliant red laser dot appeared on his chest, followed immediately by a sharp crack and the distinctive smell of ozone. The man convulsed once and collapsed, struck down by a focused electrical charge that had been precisely calibrated to incapacitate without killing. His weapon clattered across the marble floor, sliding to a stop near the feet of a terrified waiter who had been too frightened to flee. 15 seconds to pacification protocol. "Everyone get down!" Noah shouted, realizing that Aurora's system was about to treat everyone in the lobby as potential threats. "Cover your ears and breathe shallow." But even as people began following his instructions, Noah knew that some of the guests wouldn't survive what was coming. He could see Mayor Williams clutching her chest, her face ashen with the stress that could trigger her cardiac condition. Dr. Martinez was frantically checking his daughter's glucose monitor, clearly worried about how the stress and potential knockout gas might affect her diabetes management. 10 seconds to pacification protocol. The fake catering employee, seeing his partner fall, abandoned any pretense of strategy and began firing wildly into the crowd. His bullets shattered marble columns and shattered the remaining crystal fixtures, sending deadly fragments flying through the air. A woman screamed as a piece of marble grazed her shoulder, drawing blood that looked black under the emergency lighting. Noah had no choice. He broke cover and charged directly at the gunman, knowing that exposing himself might trigger Aurora's targeting system, but unable to watch innocent people die while he remained safe behind his overturned table. 5 seconds to pacification protocol. Time seemed to slow as Noah closed the distance to the operative. He could see the man's finger tightening on the trigger, could calculate the trajectory of the weapon as it swung toward him, could feel his own training taking over as muscle memory guided his movements. 3 feet from the gunman, Noah launched himself into a diving tackle that would have made his old football coach proud. They crashed into the marble pillar with bone-jarring force, the impact driving all the air from both men's lungs. Pacification protocol initiated. The words were barely audible over the sudden cacophony of sound that erupted throughout the lobby. Sonic disruptors hidden in the walls began emitting a piercing shriek that made thinking impossible. Vents in the ceiling opened to release clouds of knockout gas that smelled like almonds and tasted like metal. Electrical charges began arcing between metal fixtures, creating a deadly light show that turned the elegant lobby into something from a science fiction nightmare. Noah held his breath and pressed himself against the marble pillar, using its bulk to shield himself from the worst of the sonic assault. Around him, people were collapsing as the knockout gas took effect. Some managed to cover their faces with clothing or napkins, buying themselves precious seconds of consciousness. Others were already succumbing to the chemical assault, their legs giving out as the almond-scented vapor filled their lungs. Through the chaos, Noah could see the consultant struggling to reach Vivian, who had collapsed near the platform. The man's movements were sluggish as the gas affected his coordination, but he still clutched a small pistol in his right hand. Fighting against the disorientation caused by the sonic disruptors, Noah forced himself to move. Each step felt like walking through molasses, and the piercing sound made it impossible to maintain his balance. But Lily's blue bracelet seemed to ground him, reminding him of his promise to always protect innocent people. The consultant reached Vivian just as Noah arrived at the platform. Both men were struggling against the effects of Aurora's security system, their movements clumsy and uncoordinated. But the consultant still had his weapon, and he was raising it toward Vivian's unconscious form with grim determination. "She dies," the man gasped through the knockout gas. "Message sent." Noah lunged forward, his hand closing around the consultant's wrist, just as the man's finger found the trigger. They fought for control of the weapon, both men stumbling and falling as the gas sapped their strength and the sonic disruptors scrambled their inner ears. The gun fired, once the bullet going wide and shattering what remained of a crystal chandelier. The consultant tried to fire again, but Noah managed to twist the weapon away, sending it spinning across the marble floor to disappear into the growing clouds of knockout gas. "Stop!" Noah wheezed, his own vision beginning to blur as the gas overwhelmed his held breath. "It's over." But the consultant had one final surprise. From somewhere in his jacket, he produced a small knife with a wicked curved blade. With the last of his strength, he drove it toward Noah's chest, his movement slow but deadly accurate. Noah tried to dodge, but the knockout gas had affected his reflexes. He felt the blade pierce his shirt and begin to penetrate his skin, drawing blood and sending a sharp spike of pain through his chest. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, Aurora's security system shut down. The sonic disruptors fell silent. The gas vents closed. The electrical charges stopped arcing between fixtures. Emergency lighting was replaced by normal illumination, revealing a lobby that looked like a war zone. Bodies lay scattered across the marble floor, not dead, but unconscious from the knockout gas. Overturned tables and shattered glass created an obstacle course of debris. The elegant floral arrangements had been trampled or shot to pieces, their white orchids now stained with dirt and scattered across the floor like fallen snow. "Security override accepted," the computerized voice announced calmly. "External teams authorized for entry. Medical personnel requested." Heavy footsteps echoed through the lobby as Aurora's real security team finally gained access to the building. They moved with military precision, their black tactical gear and automatic weapons, making it clear that these were not the rent-a-cops who had been working the event. "Federal agent down," Noah managed to call out, though his voice was weak from the gas exposure. "Multiple hostiles neutralized, need medical assistance." The consultant's knife was still lodged in his chest, though it had been deflected by the Kevlar vest Noah wore beneath his janitor's uniform. The blade had penetrated the vest's edge, causing a painful but non-fatal wound just below his collarbone. "Agent Hale." The voice belonged to Director Sarah Kim Noah's handler from the Federal Corporate Crimes Task Force. She appeared through the smoke and debris like an avenging angel, her FBI windbreaker and tactical vest a stark contrast to the evening wear scattered around the lobby. "Director Kim," Noah replied, relief flooding through him as he saw familiar faces among the security team. "How did you—" Aurora's AI system sent an automatic alert to every federal agency when it detected armed intruders, she explained, kneeling beside him to assess his injuries. "We've been monitoring the building since your last report suggested possible irregularities." "The operatives," Noah gasped, pointing toward where the 4 men had fallen. "They were planning to kidnap Vivian Vale. Something about Aurora selling surveillance technology to foreign governments." "We know," Director Kim replied grimly. "We've been tracking this cell for months. They're part of a larger organization that's been targeting tech companies involved in international contracts. Some of their previous operations have resulted in multiple casualties." As FBI medics began treating Noah's wound and checking on the unconscious civilians, he found himself thinking about how close they'd all come to disaster. If Aurora's security system had been just a few seconds slower, if the operatives had been slightly more professional, if Vivian hadn't had the courage to stand up to armed terrorists. "Is everyone else okay?" he asked, trying to sit up despite the medics' protests. "Most of the guests will recover fully from the gas exposure," Director Kim assured him. "A few minor injuries from the panic, but no fatalities. Mayor Williams is being monitored for cardiac stress, but her doctors are optimistic. And Vivian, unconscious but stable. She's asking for you." Noah looked across the lobby to where Vivian was being helped to her feet by FBI medics. Despite everything she'd been through, she managed to walk over to where Noah was receiving treatment. "I don't understand," she said, her voice still slightly slurred from the gas. "Who are you really? And why were those men so angry about our international contracts?" Noah exchanged a glance with Director Kim, who nodded slightly. His cover was blown anyway. There was no point in maintaining the fiction now. "My name is Noah Hale, and I'm a federal agent with the Corporate Crimes Task Force," he said. "For the past 6 weeks, I've been investigating Aurora Dynamics for possible violations of international technology transfer laws." Vivian's face went through a complex series of emotions: surprise, betrayal, anger, and finally understanding. The janitor who everyone ignored. The invisible man who saw everything. Something like that. "And what did you see?" Noah considered his words carefully. I saw a company that's grown so fast it may not fully understand what some of its international partners are doing with Aurora's technology. I saw cost-cutting measures that put people at risk. But I also saw a CEO who was willing to risk her life to protect innocent people. The men who attacked us tonight, Vivian said slowly. They weren't entirely wrong about our international business, were they? That's what we're here to find out, Director Kim interjected. Ms. Vale, Aurora Dynamics is going to be subject to a comprehensive federal investigation. We'll need full access to your international contracts, your technology specifications, and your partner vetting procedures. And if we cooperate fully, then we'll work together to ensure that Aurora's technology is used for legitimate purposes only. If there are problems, we'll fix them. If there are bad actors among your partners, we'll identify and prosecute them. Vivian nodded slowly, her business instincts already calculating the implications. What about tonight? How do we explain what happened here? Terrorist attack thwarted by federal agents, Director Kim replied. Aurora's cooperation with the investigation will be noted in all official reports. Your willingness to activate your security systems and protect innocent civilians will also be emphasized. As FBI agents began processing the crime scene and interviewing witnesses, Noah found himself thinking about the strange turns his life had taken. 6 weeks ago, he'd been a grieving widower trying to balance single parenthood with a demanding federal career. Tonight, he'd saved hundreds of lives and exposed a corporate conspiracy that reached across multiple countries. Agent Hale, Vivian said quietly. I have a question. Yes, ma'am. Would you consider a career change? Noah looked at her in surprise. Excuse me. Aurora needs a new head of security, someone who actually understands what security means, someone who can see threats that others miss. She paused, studying his face. Someone who puts protecting people above protecting profits. I'm flattered, but I already have a job. Think about it, Vivian insisted. You've seen our weaknesses from the inside. You know what needs to be fixed. And frankly, after tonight, I don't trust anyone else to do it right. Director Kim cleared her throat. Actually, that might not be a bad idea. Aurora's going to need someone to oversee the implementation of new security protocols as part of their cooperation agreement. Someone with federal credentials and a track record of results. Noah touched Lily's bracelet and took a deep breath. The idea of leaving federal law enforcement had never occurred to him, but after 6 weeks of pretending to be invisible, the thought of working somewhere he'd be valued for his expertise was appealing. I'll think about it, he said finally. As dawn broke over the city, Noah stood in the lobby of Aurora Tower, watching FBI technicians catalog evidence and interview witnesses. The elegant space that had hosted 300 of the city's elite just hours earlier looked like a crime scene, complete with yellow tape and numbered markers. But beneath the chaos and destruction, something had changed. The invisible people, the janitors, the servers, the security guards were being treated with respect and attention for the first time. FBI agents were carefully interviewing every staff member, recognizing that they might have observed crucial details that the guests had missed. Daddy! The voice made Noah spin around, ignoring the sharp pain in his chest. Lily was running across the lobby, her small figure weaving between FBI agents and crime scene technicians. Behind her, Emma's sister, Karen, looked apologetic and worried. I'm sorry, Karen said, as she caught up to Lily. She saw the news reports and insisted on coming. She was worried about you. Noah knelt down and caught Lily in a careful hug, mindful of his bandaged wound. Hey, sweetheart. What are you doing here? The lady on TV said there was trouble at your building. Lily said, her 7-year-old eyes wide with concern. Are you okay? Did you get hurt? I'm fine, Noah assured her, though he could see her sharp eyes taking in his bandages and the blood on his torn shirt. "Just a little scratch." "Did you use your bracelet?" she asked seriously. "Did you remember to breathe?" Noah looked down at the blue fabric around his wrist, still somehow intact, despite everything that had happened. "Yes, sweetheart. It helped me stay calm when things got scary." "Good." Lily nodded with satisfaction, then lowered her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "Daddy, were you a superhero tonight?" Noah glanced around at the FBI agents, the crime scene, and the evidence of the violence that had erupted in this elegant space. Then he looked back at his daughter's expectant face. "No, sweetheart," he said gently. "I was just doing my job." "But you saved people, right?" "I had help from a lot of other people." "That's what superheroes do," Lily declared with the absolute certainty of childhood. "They work together to help people." As Noah stood up, still holding his daughter's hand, he realized she might be right. Maybe being a hero wasn't about having special powers or wearing a costume. Maybe it was just about being willing to step forward when people needed help, especially when no one expected you to be the one who made a difference. The invisible man had become visible at last, and the world looked different from this new perspective. But somewhere in his heart, Noah knew that the most important part of his identity would always be the simplest one. He was Lily's father, and everything else was just details. The sun was fully up now, streaming through the damaged windows of Aurora Tower, and illuminating the beginning of what would undoubtedly be a very complicated day. But for the first time in months, Noah Hale felt like he could see clearly. The invisible man had found his way back into the light. The morning sunlight streaming through Aurora Tower's damaged windows felt different somehow, as if the events of the previous night had fundamentally altered the building's atmosphere. Noah sat in Vivian Vale's executive conference room on the 40th floor, his chest still aching from the consultant's knife wound, watching as FBI forensics teams continued their meticulous work in the lobby far below. 3 days had passed since the attack, and the world had taken notice. CNN had run the story as their lead for 48 hours straight. The footage captured by guests' smartphones had gone viral, showing grainy but unmistakable images of a janitor in a navy blue uniform single-handedly taking down armed terrorists, while Aurora's elite security team struggled to respond. "The hero janitor saves CEO and hundreds" had been the New York Times headline. "From invisible to invincible," proclaimed USA Today. Social media had latched onto the story with characteristic intensity, turning Noah into an overnight sensation he never wanted to be. "Agent Hale," Director Kim said, settling into the chair across from him with a thick folder marked "Classified." "We need to discuss your future." Noah looked up from his contemplation of the city below. "I figured this conversation was coming." "Your cover identity is completely blown. Every major news outlet in the country has your photograph, and half of them are digging into your background. We've managed to keep your federal employment classified, but that won't last long." "What about Lily?" Noah's voice carried the edge of concern that always appeared when his daughter's safety was discussed. "Has there been any media attention at her school? We've had agents monitoring the situation. So far, the press hasn't made the connection to your family, but it's only a matter of time." Director Kim opened her folder and spread several documents across the polished conference table. "Which brings us to your options." Noah studied the papers, transfer requests, assignment changes, early retirement packages. All of them represented dramatic changes to the life he'd carefully constructed since Emma's death. Option 1. Director Kim continued, "Full witness protection. New identities for both you and Lily, relocation to another state, complete severance from your current life." "That's not an option," Noah said immediately. Lily's been through enough upheaval. She needs stability, familiar surroundings, her friends, and her school. Option 2, transfer to a desk job in Washington. Intelligence analysis, policy development, training new agents. Important work, but it would mean long hours and frequent travel. Noah shook his head. I became a federal agent to protect people directly, not to write reports about other people protecting people. Which brings us to option 3. Director Kim's expression suggested this was the option she favored. Vivian Vale's offer. The conference room door opened and Vivian herself entered, looking remarkably composed for someone who had nearly been kidnapped 3 days earlier. She wore a navy blue business suit that somehow managed to be both professional and approachable, and her blonde hair was pulled back in a style that emphasized the intelligence in her green eyes. Agent Hale, she said, extending her hand. Thank you for agreeing to hear me out. Ms. Vale. Noah rose to shake her hand, noting that her grip was firm and confident. I have to admit, I'm curious about what you have in mind. Vivian took a seat at the head of the conference table, immediately commanding the space in the way that successful executives always did. Aurora Dynamics is at a crossroads. The federal investigation has revealed serious problems with our international operations, problems that I was either unaware of or chose to ignore. And you want me to fix them. I want you to rebuild our entire security apparatus from the ground up. Not just physical security, but information security, partner vetting, risk assessment, threat analysis, everything. Vivian leaned forward, her intensity evident. The attack 3 nights ago exposed weaknesses I didn't even know existed. We need someone who thinks like a federal agent, who understands both corporate operations and real-world threats. Director Kim pulled out another document. The FBI would maintain a consulting relationship with Aurora through Agent Hale's position. It would allow us to monitor Aurora's compliance with federal regulations while giving them access to law enforcement expertise. What exactly would my role be? Noah asked. Chief Security Officer, Vivian replied without hesitation. Full executive authority over all security matters, reporting directly to me. You'd have carte blanche to implement whatever systems and procedures you deem necessary. And the salary? Vivian slid a paper across the table. Noah glanced at the number and felt his eyebrows rise involuntarily. It was more than triple his federal agent salary. That's generous, he said carefully. But money isn't my primary concern. I know, Vivian said. That's exactly why I want you for this job. Agent Hale, in 3 days of background checking, I've learned more about your character than I knew about some executives I've worked with for years. You walked away from a lucrative private security career to become a federal agent because you wanted to serve your country. You've turned down multiple job offers from defense contractors because you didn't want to work for companies that profited from conflict. Noah shifted uncomfortably. He hadn't realized his employment history was quite so transparent. You're a single father raising a 7-year-old daughter while working one of the most demanding jobs in law enforcement, Vivian continued. You've never missed a parent-teacher conference, never failed to attend one of Lily's school events, never let your professional obligations interfere with your responsibilities as a father. How do you know about... I had my people research you thoroughly, Vivian said, not apologetically. It's what any responsible CEO would do before offering someone an executive position. But what I found wasn't just professional competence, I found integrity. And right now, Aurora needs integrity more than it needs anything else. Noah looked at Director Kim, who nodded encouragingly. It's a good opportunity, Noah. You'd still be serving your country, just in a different capacity. And Aurora's cooperation has been exemplary so far. This could be a model for how private corporations and federal agencies work together. There's something else, Vivian said quietly. Something I haven't shared with Director Kim yet. She pulled out a tablet and swiped to display a series of financial documents. The federal investigation has uncovered evidence that several of Aurora's international partners have been using our technology for purposes we never authorized. Surveillance of political dissidents, tracking of journalists, suppression of peaceful protests. Noah studied the documents, his jaw tightening as he recognized the implications. These contracts represent millions of dollars in revenue. 47 million last year alone, Vivian confirmed. And I'm terminating every single one of them. That's a significant financial hit. It's the right thing to do. Vivian's voice carried absolute conviction. I built Aurora to make the world more connected, more efficient, more secure. I never intended for our technology to be used to oppress people or silence legitimate dissent. Director Kim leaned forward with interest. Ms. Vale, are you saying you're willing to voluntarily terminate contracts that the federal investigation hasn't even specifically targeted yet? I'm saying that Agent Hale's investigation, his 6 weeks of watching us from the inside, showed me that Aurora had lost sight of its core values. We became so focused on growth and market share that we stopped asking hard questions about our partners' intentions. Noah found himself genuinely impressed. Most CEOs would fight tooth and nail to preserve profitable contracts, especially ones that weren't technically illegal. But here's the thing, Vivian continued. Terminating those contracts is going to create enemies. Some of these foreign partners aren't going to accept cancellation gracefully. They're going to try to steal our technology, hack our systems, maybe even target our personnel directly. And you want me to protect Aurora from the consequences of doing the right thing, Noah said, understanding dawning. I want you to help us be the kind of company that doesn't need protection from the consequences of doing the right thing. Vivian's green eyes held steady on his. I want you to help us build systems and partnerships that serve legitimate security needs without enabling oppression. The conversation was interrupted by a soft knock on the conference room door. Sarah Chen, the evening security coordinator, who had been one of the few Aurora employees to treat Noah with consistent respect, peered in hesitantly. Ms. Vale, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's someone here to see Agent Hale. She says she's his daughter. Noah's heart jumped. Lily, what's she doing here? Apparently she convinced her aunt to bring her by after school, Sarah said with a slight smile. She says she wants to see where her daddy works. Send her up, Vivian said before Noah could respond. I'd like to meet her. A few minutes later, Lily bounded into the conference room with the boundless energy that only 7-year-olds possessed. She wore her school uniform, a navy blue jumper over a white blouse, and her backpack was decorated with patches from various science museums and nature centers. Daddy! She exclaimed, running to hug him carefully around his injured side. This building is so tall, Karen showed me how you can see the whole city from the elevator. Hey, sweetheart. Noah said, his voice automatically softening, as it always did when talking to his daughter. What are you doing here? I wanted to see your real job, Lily said matter-of-factly. Karen said you're famous now because you helped people, and I wanted to see where it happened. Vivian cleared her throat gently. Lily, I'm Vivian Vale. I'm the person your father helped. Lily studied Vivian with the direct, unfiltered gaze that children used when sizing up adults. Are you the lady from the TV? The one who was in trouble? That's right. Daddy saved you. He saved a lot of people, Vivian said seriously, including me. Lily nodded as if this was exactly what she'd expected to hear. Daddy's good at helping people. He helped Mrs. Henderson when her car wouldn't start, and he helped Tommy Chen when the big kids were being mean to him at school. Lily, Noah said gently, Ms. Vale and I were having an important meeting. It's fine, Vivian interrupted. Actually, Lily, maybe you can help me with something. I've offered your father a job here at Aurora, but he hasn't given me an answer yet. What do you think? Should he come work for my company? Lily considered this question with the seriousness that children brought to truly important decisions. She looked around the conference room, taking in the expensive furniture, the floor-to-ceiling windows, and the impressive view of the city. Would he still get to help people? She asked finally. Every day, Vivian assured her. Would he have to wear a suit? Sometimes, but he could probably wear his regular clothes most of the time. Would we still live in our house? Absolutely. Your father would work here, but you'd keep going to the same school, living in the same place, seeing all the same friends. Lily nodded thoughtfully, then turned to her father. Daddy, do you like helping people here? Noah looked around the conference room, thinking about the events of the past few days. I think I could do a lot of good here, sweetheart. Then you should take the job, Lily declared with the absolute certainty that children brought to simple decisions. But only if you promise to come to my science fair next month. I wouldn't miss it for the world, Noah said, realizing, as he spoke the words, that his decision had already been made. Vivian smiled, the first genuinely relaxed expression Noah had seen from her since the night of the attack. Is that a yes, Agent Hale? That's a yes, Noah confirmed, but I have some conditions. Name them. First, I want complete authority over security protocols. No cost-cutting measures that compromise safety, no executive overrides of my decisions, no exceptions for VIP guests or important clients. Agreed. Second, I want direct access to all international contracts before they're signed. Nothing gets approved without security review. Done. Third, I want to hire my own team. People I trust, people with the right experience and the right values. Whatever you need. And fourth, Noah said, glancing at Lily, my daughter comes first, always. If she has a school event or gets sick or needs me for any reason, work waits. Of course, Vivian said without hesitation. Agent Hale, Noah, I'm not hiring you despite your commitment to your daughter. I'm hiring you because of it. A man who puts his family first is exactly the kind of person I want making security decisions for Aurora. Director Kim closed her folder with a satisfied expression. Well then, I think we have an agreement. Noah, you'll need to submit your resignation to the Bureau, but I'll make sure it's processed as a leave of absence rather than a permanent separation. If this doesn't work out, you'll have a path back to federal service. Thank you, Noah said, meaning it, for everything. As the meeting concluded and arrangements were made for Noah's transition from federal agent to corporate executive, he found himself thinking about the strange turns his life had taken. 6 months ago, he'd been struggling to balance single parenthood with the demands of undercover work. 3 days ago, he'd been a janitor mopping floors in this very building. Now, he was about to become the chief security officer of a billion-dollar corporation. But perhaps the strangest part was how right it felt. Daddy, Lily said, as they waited for the elevator. Are you going to have your own office? I think so, sweetheart. Can I see it? Vivian, who was walking with them toward the elevator, gestured toward a corner office at the end of the hall. Actually, that one's going to be yours, Noah. Floor-to-ceiling windows, private bathroom conference area. You can decorate it however you like. Lily pressed her nose against the glass wall of the empty office, her eyes wide as she took in the view of the city sprawling out below. Wow, you can see everything from here. That's the idea, Noah said, thinking about how different his perspective would be from this 40th floor vantage point compared to the ground-level view he'd had as a janitor. Mr. Hale. The voice belonged to James Morrison, Aurora's former head of security, who approached them with obvious nervousness. I wanted to apologize for my behavior the other night. I should have listened to your concerns instead of treating you like a janitor. Noah suggested with a slight smile. Morrison flushed, like someone whose observations didn't matter. It was unprofessional and, as it turned out, dangerous. Apology accepted, Noah said. But Morrison, in the future, remember that the people others ignore often see the most important things. Security isn't about fancy equipment or impressive uniforms. It's about paying attention to details that everyone else misses. Yes, sir. Will I be that is, do you plan to keep me on your team? Noah studied the man for a moment. Morrison was competent enough, and his willingness to admit his mistakes suggested he might be capable of learning from them. We'll see, Noah said finally. I'm going to be rebuilding the entire security department from scratch. If you're willing to set aside your ego and learn a new way of doing things, there might be a place for you. Relief flooded Morrison's face. Thank you, sir. I won't let you down. As Morrison walked away, Vivian shook her head with amusement. 3 days ago he wouldn't have given you the time of day. Now he's calling you sir and begging to keep his job. Funny how perspective changes, Noah observed. The elevator arrived, and as they descended toward the lobby, Noah found himself looking at Aurora Tower with completely different eyes. This was no longer a target to be investigated or a building to be cleaned. It was his responsibility, now his domain, to protect and improve. Daddy, Lily said quietly, are you nervous about your new job? Noah considered the question seriously. A little bit, sweetheart. It's a big responsibility. But you'll do good, right? You'll help keep people safe. That's the plan. Then it'll be okay, Lily declared with the simple confidence that had always amazed him. You're good at helping people. That's what makes you special. As they reached the lobby, now fully repaired and showing no signs of the violence that had erupted there just 3 days earlier, Noah reflected on his daughter's words. Maybe she was right. Maybe being special wasn't about having extraordinary abilities or achieving fame or recognition. Maybe it was simply about being willing to help when help was needed, regardless of whether anyone noticed or appreciated the effort. The lobby was bustling with its usual afternoon activity. Business people hurried toward meetings, delivery personnel wheeled packages across the marble floors, and real cleaning staff, went about their work with quiet efficiency. To most observers, it was just another day in another corporate building. But Noah saw it differently now. He saw the potential vulnerabilities, the blind spots where threats could develop, the choke points where evacuation could be compromised. He also saw the hard-working people who kept this place functioning, the security guards, the maintenance crews, the administrative staff who made sure everything ran smoothly. These were the people he would be protecting now. Not just the executives and VIPs, but everyone who worked in or visited Aurora Tower. The janitors and servers and receptionists who others might overlook, but who were just as deserving of safety and security as anyone else. Ms. Vale, Noah said, as they reached the main entrance, I'd like to start immediately, tomorrow morning if possible. Eager to begin, eager to make sure nothing like the other night ever happens again. Vivian extended her hand once more. Welcome to Aurora Dynamics, Noah. I have a feeling this is going to be the beginning of something important. As they shook hands, Noah felt the weight of his new responsibility settling on his shoulders. It was daunting, but it was also energizing. For the first time since Emma's death, he felt like he was moving toward something positive, rather than simply trying to survive each day. Daddy, Lily said, as they walked toward Karen's car in the parking garage, do you think the bad guys will try to come back? It was a perceptive question, more perceptive than Noah had expected from a 7-year-old. I don't know, sweetheart. But if they do, we'll be ready for them. Because you're going to make the building safer. Because I'm going to make sure the right people are watching out for everyone who works there. Lily nodded with satisfaction. Good. That's what heroes do. As they drove away from Aurora Tower, Noah found himself looking back at the gleaming 40-story building with a mixture of anticipation and determination. Tomorrow, he would begin the challenging work of transforming Aurora's security from a cost center that Vivian had tried to minimize into a comprehensive protection system that actually served its intended purpose. There would be resistance from executives who didn't want to spend money on security measures they couldn't see or understand. There would be technical challenges as he implemented new systems and protocols. There would be political complexities as he navigated the relationships between Aurora and its federal overseers. But tonight, as he helped Lily with her homework and listened to her excited chatter about her upcoming science fair project, Noah felt something he hadn't experienced in months, genuine optimism about the future. He was no longer invisible. He was no longer just surviving. He was building something new, something that would make a real difference in the lives of real people. And somewhere in Aurora Tower, the night shift janitors went about their work with quiet efficiency, their observations and insights now valued by a security chief who understood that everyone's perspective mattered. The invisible man had stepped into the light, and he was determined to make sure that light reached everyone in his care. The badge reveal was complete, but the real work was just beginning. 6 months later, Noah stood in his corner office on the 40th floor of Aurora Tower, watching the sun set over a city that had come to know him not as an invisible janitor, but as the man who had changed everything. The transformation hadn't happened overnight, but it had been thorough and remarkable. The office itself reflected the journey. On his desk sat 3 items that told the story of who he'd been and who he'd become: that Lily's blue Breathe bracelet, now carefully framed beside a photo of her winning first place at the science fair, a worn pair of work gloves from his janitor days, and a gleaming yellow caution sign that had become an unlikely symbol of vigilance and protection. "Dad, are you ready?" Lily's voice came from the doorway where she stood wearing her best dress, a navy blue creation that made her look far older than her 8 years. "The ceremony starts in 20 minutes. Noah straightened his tie and smiled at his daughter. "Almost ready, sweetheart. Just taking a moment to think about how we got here." Today was the dedication of Aurora Tower's Memorial Wall of Invisible Heroes, a project that had grown from Lily's innocent question 6 months ago about whether her father was a superhero. What had started as a simple recognition of overlooked workers had evolved into something much more significant, a permanent reminder that heroism came in many forms and often went unrecognized until crisis revealed its presence. Mr. Hale, Sarah Chen, appeared beside Lily, now wearing the uniform of Aurora's enhanced security team. Sarah had been one of Noah's first hires when he restructured the department, recognizing that she possessed the observational skills and genuine care for people that made truly effective security possible. "Ms. Vale asked me to tell you that the mayor has arrived along with the FBI director and about 200 other guests." "How's the security perimeter looking?" Noah asked, automatically shifting into the professional mode that had become second nature. "Perfect," Sarah replied with confidence. 12 plainclothes federal agents, 8 Aurora security personnel, and full electronic surveillance of a 6-block radius. Plus, every staff member in the building has been through your new awareness training program. The awareness training had been one of Noah's most successful innovations, teaching custodial staff, receptionists, delivery personnel, and other often overlooked employees to recognize and report suspicious behavior. The program had already prevented 3 potential incidents, including a corporate espionage attempt and 2 cases of domestic violence spillover that could have endangered Aurora employees. And the international situation? Noah asked, referring to the ongoing fallout from Aurora's termination of problematic overseas contracts. Quiet for the past month, Sarah reported. The last attempted cyber intrusion was blocked by the new defensive systems, and our partner vetting process has eliminated all the questionable contracts without any significant retaliation. Noah nodded with satisfaction. The transition hadn't been easy. Aurora had lost nearly $60 million in revenue by cutting ties with authoritarian governments and questionable business partners. But the company's stock price had actually risen as investors recognized the long-term value of ethical business practices and robust security measures. "Dad," Lily said impatiently, "we really need to go. Aunt Karen is saving our seats, and she says the good spots are filling up fast." As they walked toward the elevator, Noah reflected on the changes that had transformed not just Aurora Tower, but his entire life. The building's security system had been completely overhauled with human judgment and technological capability working in harmony rather than as competing elements. The international division now operated under strict ethical guidelines, with every contract subject to security review and human rights assessment. But perhaps more importantly, the culture of the building had shifted. The invisible workers were invisible no longer. Security cameras that had once monitored only for theft and vandalism now served as eyes and ears for a comprehensive safety network that protected everyone from corporate executives to night janitors. The elevator descended toward the lobby, where the dedication ceremony would take place. Through the glass walls, Noah could see the space that had been transformed from a site of terror into something beautiful and meaningful. The marble floors gleamed under soft lighting, and elegant displays showcased the stories of ordinary people who had done extraordinary things. "Are you nervous, Dad?" Lily asked as they reached the ground floor. "A little," Noah admitted. "It's one thing to do your job when no one's watching. It's another thing to talk about it in front of 200 people and television cameras. Just remember what you told me about the science fair," Lily said seriously. "You said the important thing wasn't impressing people, it was sharing something that might help them learn." Noah smiled at his daughter's wisdom. "You're right, sweetheart. Thank you for reminding me." The lobby was indeed packed with guests, their conversations creating a sophisticated buzz that filled the soaring space. Noah recognized many faces from the night of the attack: Mayor Patricia Williams, looking healthy and vibrant 6 months after her cardiac scare; Dr. Martinez with his daughter Elena, whose diabetes management had been unaffected by the chaos; countless business leaders and city officials who had witnessed the transformation of Aurora's approach to corporate responsibility. But Noah was most pleased to see the faces that others might not recognize: the night shift custodial staff, the security guards who had implemented his new protocols, the administrative personnel who had embraced the expanded awareness training. These were the people whose daily vigilance made Aurora Tower one of the safest corporate facilities in the country. Noah, Vivian Vale, approached resplendent in a tailored white suit that somehow managed to be both elegant and approachable. "Are you ready for your moment in the spotlight?" "I'm ready to honor the people who deserve recognition," Noah replied carefully. "Good answer." Vivian's green eyes sparkled with amusement. "You know, when I first offered you this job, I thought I was hiring a security expert. I didn't realize I was bringing in someone who would fundamentally change how we think about human value and corporate responsibility." The assessment was accurate. Under Noah's leadership, Aurora had implemented a revolutionary approach to workplace security that treated every employee as both a valuable asset and a potential first responder. The results had been remarkable: reported incidents down 70%, employee satisfaction up significantly, and a company culture that had attracted national attention for its innovative approach to corporate citizenship. "Ladies and gentlemen," a voice announced over the lobby's sound system, Please gather around the memorial wall for the dedication ceremony. The crowd moved with practiced efficiency toward the center of the lobby, where a covered display dominated the space. Noah could see the outline of what lay beneath the elegant draping, a wall that would serve as a permanent reminder of the heroism that existed in everyday work. Director Kim from the FBI stepped to a microphone that had been set up near the display. She wore her formal bureau uniform, and her presence added weight to the significance of the occasion. 6 months ago, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the lobby. This building was the site of a terrorist attack that could have resulted in hundreds of casualties. That tragedy was prevented not by sophisticated technology or elite security forces, but by the vigilance and courage of people who others had overlooked. The crowd listened intently as Director Kim recounted the events of that night, the 4 operatives who had infiltrated the building, the electromagnetic pulse device that could have killed dozens of innocent people, the extraction plan that would have resulted in corporate secrets being sold to foreign governments. But this story isn't really about terrorism or corporate espionage, Director Kim continued. It's about the fundamental truth that heroism exists everywhere, in every workplace, in every community. It's about recognizing that the people we depend on every day, the cleaners, the guards, the maintenance workers, the administrative staff, are not invisible at all. They are the eyes and ears that keep us safe, the hands that maintain our civilization, the hearts that care about the well-being of others. Noah felt a familiar tightness in his chest as he listened to the director's words. The recognition was gratifying, but it also reminded him of the weight of responsibility he carried every day. Today, Director Kim said, "We're not just dedicating a memorial wall. We're committing to a new understanding of what security means in the modern world. We're acknowledging that true safety comes not from barriers and surveillance, but from creating communities where everyone feels valued, where everyone is empowered to act, where everyone understands that they have a role to play in protecting others." The director gestured toward Noah. "I'd like to invite Noah Hale, Aurora's Chief Security Officer, and the federal agent whose undercover investigation led to this transformation, to unveil the memorial wall." Noah felt hundreds of eyes upon him as he walked toward the covered display. Lily followed close behind her presence, giving him the courage he needed for this public moment. "Before I reveal this memorial," Noah said, his voice carrying clearly through the lobby's acoustics, "I want to tell you about a conversation I had with my daughter 6 months ago." He looked down at Lily, who beamed up at him with pride. "She asked me if I was a superhero because I had helped people. I told her no, that I was just doing my job. But she insisted that working together to help others was exactly what superheroes do." The crowd chuckled appreciatively, but Noah's expression remained serious. "Over the past 6 months, I've learned that my daughter was right. Heroism isn't about having special powers or recognition or glory. It's about being willing to pay attention when others look away. It's about caring enough to act when action is needed. It's about understanding that everyone has something valuable to contribute to the safety and well-being of their community." Noah reached for the covering on the memorial wall. This wall doesn't just honor the people who prevented a tragedy 6 months ago. It honors everyone who chooses to see instead of looking away, everyone who chooses to act instead of assuming someone else will handle it, everyone who understands that there are no small roles when it comes to protecting others. He pulled away the draping, revealing a stunning installation that took the crowd's breath away. The memorial wall stretched across the entire width of the lobby, rising 20 feet toward the vaulted ceiling. But instead of cold marble or bronze plaques, it was a living display. Digital screens that showed the faces and stories of ordinary people who had done extraordinary things. At the center of the display was Lily's crayon drawing, from 6 months ago, the picture of her father in his janitor's uniform, mop in hand, standing protectively in front of a woman in white. The child's artwork had been professionally reproduced and mounted, surrounded by stories of heroism from around the world. There was Maria Santos, a custodial worker in Chicago, who had noticed unusual activity in her building and alerted authorities to a planned cyber attack. James Wright, a security guard in Dallas, who had recognized the signs of domestic violence and helped a threatened employee find safety. Dr. Susan Chen, a night shift physician, who had spotted a human trafficking operation and worked with police to rescue 17 victims. Each of these stories, Noah explained to the mesmerized crowd, represents someone who was considered invisible until their actions revealed their true importance. The memorial wall will continue to grow, showcasing new stories of everyday heroism from around the world. But the most powerful element of the display was at the very top, a simple message written in elegant script. To the invisible heroes in every workplace, every community, every life, you are seen, you are valued, you matter. Lily stepped forward and placed her small hand on a special panel at the base of the memorial. The entire display lit up with additional images, Aurora employees who had implemented Noah's new security protocols, workers from other companies who had prevented incidents through vigilance and courage, ordinary people whose extraordinary actions had made a difference in the lives of others. This memorial will serve as a reminder, Noah continued, that security is not something we buy or install or implement. Security is something we create together through awareness, through caring, through the understanding that we all have a responsibility to protect each other. The crowd erupted in applause, but Noah was already thinking beyond the ceremony to the ongoing work that lay ahead. The memorial wall was beautiful and meaningful, but it was just a symbol. The real impact came from the daily choices that people made to pay attention, to care, to act. As the formal ceremony concluded and guests began mingling around the memorial, Noah found himself approached by a young woman he didn't recognize. She wore the uniform of the building's cleaning service, and her name tag read Angela. "Mr. Hale," she said quietly, "I wanted to thank you for what you've done here. I've been working as a janitor for 3 years, and this is the first place where people actually see me, where they listen when I report something unusual." "What's your last name, Angela?" Noah asked. "Rodriguez." "Angela Rodriguez, what you do every day matters enormously. You see things that others miss because you pay attention to details. Never let anyone convince you that your work isn't important." Angela's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, sir. That means more than you know." As she walked away, Noah felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned to see Vivian, who had been watching the interaction with obvious emotion. "Do you have any idea what you've accomplished here?" she asked. "I've tried to create systems that value everyone's contribution," Noah replied modestly. "You've done much more than that. You've changed how an entire corporation thinks about human dignity and social responsibility. Do you know that we've had inquiries from over 200 companies asking for consulting on how to implement similar programs?" Noah raised his eyebrows in surprise. "I hadn't heard about that." "Because you've been too busy actually doing the work to pay attention to the publicity." Vivian smiled. "Noah, I have a proposition for you." "Another career change?" he asked with amusement. "A career expansion. I want Aurora to create a new division, corporate security and social responsibility, with you as the director. We'll consult with companies around the world, helping them implement security programs that actually serve their communities." The offer was tempting, but Noah found himself thinking about the commitments he'd already made. "I appreciate the confidence, Vivian, but I'm not sure I want to travel extensively. Lily needs stability, and I've promised to be present for her childhood." "Who said anything about travel?" Vivian's eyes sparkled with mischief. We'll bring them here. Aurora Tower will become a training center, a place where companies send their people to learn how to build better security cultures. You'll work with a few dozen organizations per year instead of hundreds, but the impact will be much deeper. Noah considered the possibility. Training others to implement similar programs would multiply the impact far beyond what he could accomplish working with Aurora alone. "I'll think about it," he said finally. "Think quickly," Vivian advised. "I've already had calls from the Department of Homeland Security and 3 foreign governments. The Aurora model is attracting international attention." As the evening progressed and guests gradually departed, Noah found himself standing alone with Lily in front of the memorial wall. The digital displays continued their gentle rotation of stories, each one representing someone who had chosen to see instead of looking away. "Dad," Lily said thoughtfully, "do you think Mom would be proud of what we've done?" The question caught Noah off guard. Lily rarely mentioned Emma directly, though Noah knew his daughter thought about her mother often. "I think your mom would be very proud," he said carefully. "She always believed that the most important thing anyone could do was help other people feel safe and valued." "Is that why you took this job, to help people feel safe?" Noah knelt down to his daughter's level, looking into brown eyes that were so much like Emma's. "I took this job because I wanted to build something good, something that would make the world a little bit better, but I kept this job because I realized I could honor your mother's memory by creating the kind of workplace she would have wanted to be part of." Lily nodded solemnly, then brightened. "And because you get to work in a really tall building with an awesome view." Noah laughed, the sound echoing through the now quiet lobby. "That doesn't hurt." As they prepared to leave Aurora Tower, Noah took one last look around the memorial wall. In just 6 months, this space had been transformed from a site of near tragedy into a symbol of hope and human potential. The transformation reflected not just changes in security protocols or corporate policies, but a fundamental shift in how people thought about their responsibilities to each other. "Are you ready to go home, sweetheart?" he asked Lily. "Ready," she confirmed, then paused. "Dad, when I grow up, I want to do what you do. Help people feel safe. Help people understand that they matter." As they walked out of Aurora Tower and into the warm evening air, Noah realized that his daughter had just articulated the most important lesson of the past 6 months. The memorial wall, the security protocols, the training programs, the corporate partnerships. All of it came down to the simple but revolutionary idea that every person's contribution mattered, that everyone deserved to be seen and valued. The invisible man had stepped into the light, not just to save lives during a single night of terror, but to illuminate a path toward a more just and caring world. And in doing so, he had discovered that true heroism wasn't about dramatic rescues or public recognition. It was about the daily choice to see others clearly and treat them with dignity. 6 months later, Aurora Tower stood as proof that corporations could be forces for good in the world, that security could be achieved through inclusion rather than exclusion, that ordinary people could accomplish extraordinary things when they were given the tools and respect they deserved. The memorial wall would continue to grow new stories, joining Lily's crayon drawing as testament to the heroism that existed everywhere, waiting to be recognized and celebrated. And Noah Hale, former invisible janitor turned visible guardian, would continue the work of helping others understand that everyone had something valuable to contribute to the safety and well-being of their community. As father and daughter walked home through the city streets, past windows lit with the warm glow of families sharing dinner and homework and bedtime stories, Noah felt a deep sense of satisfaction. He had found his purpose not in the dramatic moments of crisis, but in the quiet, daily work of building systems that honored human dignity. The invisible heroes were invisible no longer, and the world was beginning to understand that true security came not from walls and weapons, but from the revolutionary act of seeing each other clearly and caring enough to act. In the distance, Aurora Tower gleamed against the darkening sky, its memorial wall glowing softly, with the faces of ordinary people who had chosen to do extraordinary things. And somewhere in the building, the night shift was beginning their work, no longer invisible, no longer overlooked, but valued members of a community dedicated to protecting and serving others. The badge had been revealed. The hero recognized, but the most important work was just beginning. Because true heroism wasn't a destination, it was a choice that had to be made new each day by each person who decided that the well-being of others mattered enough to pay attention, to care, and to act. The invisible man had become visible, but in doing so, he had helped others understand that they too had always been heroes. They just needed someone to see them clearly and give them the tools to shine.